Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Glad to see a fairly large crowd here this morning. It is customary for our Board of Commissioners to begin each of our meetings with a prayer by a sitting commissioner and then the pledge of allegiance to the flag. During this prayer, you're welcome to stand and join the commissioners in the prayer. You're welcome to use it as your own prayer, or you can use it to have your own prayer, or of course you can use it for a moment of silence, whichever you so desire. And at this time, I'd call on Commissioner Marvin Arrington for the invocation. Commissioner?
Let us pray. We stand here today as believers with faith in God and the power of love. For it is in God we trust. O merciful God of love, I pray today and ask for your forgiveness and to help us all overcome our bias towards others that are different from us. For I know there is power in love and forgiveness. O God, continue to give us your love. Today I pray for the well-being of all our Nash County citizens in the hope that they can enjoy a peaceful and rewarding life. Thank you, God, for allowing us as county commissioners to serve our citizens in this position of leadership. I pray for our continued divine guidance of love from you, O God. I also pray for your guidance and love as we celebrate African American history during this month of February. God, I ask you to give us all the courage to honor those African Americans who worked so hard to contribute to the making of America a country of love and opportunity for all. I pray this prayer in the name of the Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Would you join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioners. We are now on item number 4, which is approval of the minutes during the month of January. We had 4 different meetings: January the 9th, January the 12th, January the 23rd, and a special call meeting on January the 27th. I would accept any changes or correction to the minutes or a motion to approve the minutes as submitted as a group.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't spot any needed corrections, so I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting, 4 meetings.
Okay. Have a motion on the floor. Is there a second, Mr. Belfield motion?
Second.
Have 2 seconds. Commissioner Wilkins, Commissioner Outlaw, any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Meeting stand approved. Madam Clerk, great job. The next item is an item we have each first meeting of our month, which is a public comment time. What this time is for is to allow any citizens that are with us today to have something on their mind they wish to speak to the board about, to come forward. If it's not on the agenda in another location, if it is on the agenda as a public hearing or for any other reason, we would ask that you wait until we get to that particular item. There is a sign-up period out front before the meeting. I did have 2 people to sign up this morning, but I'll call those 2 first, and if there's someone else that didn't realize they needed to sign up, we'd certainly like to hear from you as well. At this time, I'd call on Tony Dowdy to come forward. If you would state your name and address for the record. And commissioners, be glad to hear what you got on your mind. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Tony Dowdy. I live at 208 Churchview Drive in Rocky Mount. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am here this morning to talk to you about the Nash County Senior Center. I am not sure if any of you have visited over there in the last 6 months, but our senior center is growing, and I am amazed at the amount of new folks that are joining and beginning to attend the senior center on a daily basis. I am an active member and use the fitness room and also participate in monthly socials. One thing that I have noticed while visiting recently is the lack of space compared to the amount of people that are now attending. Fitness classes are completely full, and the staff are having to turn people away. Monthly socials are also full, and if you want a chance to use the fitness room, please do not go between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. because it is jam-packed. The center is constantly having to put members on wait lists for classes, and those who are new and join today might not ever get to go to any of these classes because they are full and there's no room. The Senior Center provides a space for us to improve our overall quality of life. This is more than just fitness. The center provides a space for socialization, resources, and provides services to those that are homebound. Our seniors, including myself, are asking for more things at the Senior Center, which include more fitness classes, a bigger space for billiards players and pool, additional pieces of fitness equipment in bigger class sizes. The staff at the Senior Center are wonderful. I commend them for continuing to work hard daily to provide quality programs, but sometimes they are limited due to the space. I am sure that you are aware of the amount of growth that we have had in Nash County as a whole over the last year or so. The Senior Center is also feeling the growth, and in order to continue to serve the seniors who have lived in Nash County for their entire lives, or for those who have only recently joined in the last month or so, they deserve to have an upgraded space that allows room for everyone and less opportunity to be turned away due to full class sizes. The Nash County Senior Center is a nationally accredited senior center, which means they are one of the best in the nation. The center is close to 22 years old and has had various updates throughout the years, but has still remained the same in size. I ask you, don't you think it's time to continue to improve the quality of life of our Nash County seniors? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very well said. And this board is very in tune with providing seniors the services that they ask for. The other speaker we have signed up is a Cephas Ray. Mr. Ray, if you'll come forward at this time. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Commissioners. Cephas Ray, Bailey, North Carolina, 27807 Stony Hill Church Road. I come this morning to address the subject of roundabout, Stony Hill Church Road and 581. And the reason I'm here is I've spoken with people at DOT, and for whatever reason, they mentioned they may want some funding from the county. Therefore, I figured I'd better let you people know, so you don't get shot in the back. I don't know how much funding they want, or how the situation runs. I know there's a lot of things that transpired in the government, the way things are handled. And anyway, I have a petition started, have names on it, a letter to DOT. And I'm willing to leave this with y'all, because this is a copy, if you want it.
Sure.
If you don't, I'll take it with me when I leave.
We'd love to have it. When you leave, you can give it to the clerk there. She'll certainly get it to us, Cephas.
All right, and I mentioned something about the impact fee a year or two ago with the new homes at Green Pond area. I don't know that y'all imposed one, but depending on what the amount would be if y'all did, but you could already have raised $150,000 for the county as far as funds. And like the gentleman before me mentioned about the senior center, we are in need of expansion and growth as well, because we have overflow at some points to have to turn people away from certain programs as well. So all that mentioned, it's just all in your court, so to speak, but it's not all in your court, I understand that, because of the funding and things that transpired. And I've been told before, the wheels of government turn slow. But I've mentioned some of these things before, and y'all aware of them. So you'd like to give this to?
Janice will take it right over here. Let me ask you one question. Is this a proposed traffic circle, or is it one that the citizens are asking for?
Well, I brought it up asking questions, and people agreed we needed something. They don't want to see a stoplight The ones I've talked with, they don't want to see a four-way stop sign, which I think the last 3 weeks, there's been a four-way stop sign put at Strickland Road and 581.
It has,
There's
yes, sir.
also been one put at 231 and 97. And the intersection I'm referring to is, maybe less than 2 miles from Strickland Road.
Right.
And I don't see where we need so many four-way stop signs. I only had 3 people that didn't sign this petition because of either they felt like it took too much land, and there's one house right there at the intersection, Green Gables store could probably be removed, because one of the residents told me they've seen patrolmen cut through what would have been the, I guess, parking lot of Stony Hill Church Road, or the Green Gables Road. They just take a kind of shortcut instead of going all the way to the intersection and making a turn there. And, of course, he's only one person, and we all done similar things, I'm sure, I'm not pointing fingers at law enforcement as far as, breaking the law is concerned. But that may be the biggest holdback other than money situation. And a roundabout, as the letter states, saves on fuel when you just slow down and keep going versus stopping and sitting and starting, this type of thing.
It's probably our first request for a roundabout. The reason I asked a couple of questions, because
Yeah.
sometimes they're not very popular either, but we'd be glad to review your
Yeah,
information.
most people don't care for roundabout in a sense, and some people don't understand them from the standpoint of when we were younger, you had to stop, not stop, the person on the right had to right away in the roundabouts. And now, with a lot of traffic, it's, everyone gets their kind of first come, first serve. You just be generous and let the first person go. But however you want to work the roundabout, as long as there's no accidents. And they are safer. On here, I've got some things highlighted as far as information on the internet you find the safety, as well as costs and different things. But,
Okay. All right, we appreciate you being here this morning. Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Belfield?
it seemed as though the first gentleman's comments, we are running out of space, resource, not necessarily resources, but out of space to serve the people. That's one that we probably need to take a look at, because the senior citizens are growing in Nash County.
Fully understood, and I'm sure with our manager's history, we will hear about it pretty soon.
Yeah, I saw her taking notes, so I'm sure
Yep. Okay,
that she'll look at it. I just thought I'd make that comment.
thank you, sir. Is anyone else here that wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda that did not realize they needed to sign up? Yes, ma'am. Can you come to the podium and state your name and address? No, if it's an item on the agenda, we'll wait till we get to that item, if that's okay with you. Yes. Okay, sure, okay, thank you. Anyone that has an item that's not on the agenda? All right, thank y'all. We'll move on to item number 6 then, in this recognition of 2022 United Way campaign donors. And I'll call on Anderson Kirkland to make the presentation, our HR director. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I had some slides so y'all could follow along, but I don't have a clicker, so we're going to work on that. This- Oh, okay. Oh. Gotcha, thank you. Need a little help with the technology this morning.
We understand, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here this morning. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. As you know, each year, Nash County sponsors a campaign to support our local United Way, and we had another great year in 2022. Our first slide will draw attention to some of the campaign highlights. We had 177 individuals to participate this year. That does include commissioners and others who are not actually employed with the county. We have a total campaign proceeds of $36,692.40, which was phenomenal. All year long, we have a variety of activities that help to raise money for the United Way. And this past year, we had a Jeans Day, which was each third Friday of the month. We had Candygrams in February, Jeans and Favorite Sports Teams Apparel Day. We had a bake sale, car wash and yard sale, miniature golf tournament, 50/50 raffle, and then we had a pumpkin decorating contest sometime in October, I believe. And I believe that's all inclusive. We may have had a few more things that I've forgotten. But anyway, as you can see, we were busy all year long working on our campaign. At this time, I would like to recognize those who gave at certain levels throughout the campaign. We have a care share level, a starter care share level, and landmark. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to read the names off. And the care share donors are those who donate 1 hour of pay per month. And they are Megan, I've got mine out of order here, I'm sorry. Megan Alderman, Linda Antonez, Daniel Bailey, Megan Bandy, Joanne Basinger, Jonathan Batchelor, Heather Bone, Jeffrey Bone, Jonathan Boone, Ann Brantley, Ashton Burgess, Jackie Chartier, Beverly Cooper, Lynette Cooper, Benjamin Davis, Sandra Davis, Shamika Dawes, Morgan Dowdy, Christina Evanson, Janice Evans, Ricky Evans, Scott Farmer, Bryant Fisher, Andrea Giddens, Thomas Gillespie, Andy Hagee, Amy Hamlet. Okay, I'm not clicking something correctly.
I think you just clicked anywhere
Any-
other than that little spot.
Gotcha, okay, thank you so much. Samuel Holmes, Tammy Jones, Vicki Jones, Brittany Long, Kevin Marks, Melissa McDaniels, Shay Neal, Kimberly Nicholson, Billy Owens, Mike Phillips, Shannon Phillips, Amy Pittman, Sean Porter, Joanna Powell, Samuel Pridgeon, Kara Purcell, Scott Rogers, Stacy Schatzer, Kimberly Shields, Karen Smith, Erica Stillman, Cole Strickland, Scott Strufy, Doris Sumner, Bill Trimmer, Michael Vance, and Keith Wood. Okay. Our starter care share donors are those who donated a half an hour pay per month. They include LaShawn Battle, Sherman Booth, Tony Coleman, Christy Collier, Nadine Daniels, Brian Dunn, Mary Edwards, Sequoia Farmer, Brent Fisher, Amy Harris, Tamika Hill, Heidi Light, Angela Mangum, Beth Massengale, Anthony Morera, Heather Portis, Kelly Portis, Paula Tarnaski, Adam Tyson, Sandy Vick, Nadine Whitaker, Katrina Whitehurst, Tara Williams, and Donna Wood. And our last category that we want to give recognition to is the landmark category, donations of $500 or more. Some of these names are repeats because they did qualify at the care share level, but they also, because of the dollar amount, qualified for the landmark level as well. Jonathan Boone, Robbie Davis, Scott Farmer, Andy Hagee, Amy Hamlet, Tammy Jones, Shay Neal, Mike Phillips, Scott Rogers, Stacy Schatzer, Doris Sumner, and Donna Wood. In conclusion, I just want to say that we truly appreciate the donations of everyone toward our campaign this year, or last year, actually, and we look forward to having another great campaign this year. And thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, and thank all the employees that were called out this morning. If the board would like, we can sure give them a hand. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Anderson. We will now move to item number 7, which is our first public hearing for today, and the public hearing is on conditional rezoning request CZ 221201 Davis Little Funeral Home, and I'll call on Mr. Tyson at this time to make this presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The subject property under consideration is on the screen. You have an aerial photo on the left, a zoning map on the right. Property is approximately 3.94 acres. It's owned by Donnie S. Weaver and Ginger W. Robles. It's located on the east side of South Halifax Road, just north of Westmount Drive. And as you can see from the green color on the zoning map on the right, it's currently zoned R30, which is a single and two-family residential zoning district. This property is in the Tar-Pamlico River Basin and the WS4PA Watershed Protection Overlay District, so its development will be subject to stormwater management requirements. It is, contains or is immediately adjacent to two existing ditches that may be subject to 50-foot wide riparian stream buffers to protect them from disturbance during the future development of the property. The property owners have submitted this morning conditional rezoning request CZ 221201 to rezone this subject property to GCCZ, General Commercial Conditional Zone, specifically for the development of a new Davis Little Funeral Home. The submitted site plan is included in your package. You'll see the outline of the subject property here, and then we can zoom in. Excuse me, let me go back. And then only the northwest corner of the subject property is actually proposed for development for the new facility. The plan depicts a 4,000 square foot building with two covered carports, a 28-space parking lot that will be accessed directly from South Halifax Road through this driveway right here. There's a potential future detached storage building in the rear, which you can see back here. The proposed building does not include a dedicated chapel area, meaning that the business would only host very small visitations or ceremonies and would primarily hold larger services off-site at churches or gravesides as desired by the client. There are planted vegetative screening buffers required between the parking lot and the road right-of-way. You can see one right here. Also between the facility and the immediately adjacent residentially zoned property to the north, because the facility will be within 100 feet of that property line. So there's the planted vegetative buffer here. The building will be served by a private on-site well and septic system. And of course, the conditional nature of this rezoning request allows the board to attach reasonable site-specific development conditions with the consent of the applicant. We always consult our land use plan and our future land use map when considering a rezoning. This request is consistent with the recommendations of the recently adopted 2022 Comprehensive Land Use Plan for the establishment of a non-residential land use in this area. Because, number one, the proposed commercial land use is limited in size and scope by the site plan and the recommended conditions. Number two, as shown, it has frontage along and direct access to South Halifax Road, which is a state-maintained secondary road. Number three, the subject property is located within a quarter mile of the intersection of South Halifax Road and Westmount Drive to the south. And as you can see by this large red circle, that intersection has been intentionally designated by the plan as an area where rural commercial growth is to occur. You can also see, if this label was not in the way, that circular designated area extends to cover a portion, the southernmost portion of the subject property that we're talking about this morning. The rural commercial area includes other already existing commercial land uses that you'll be familiar with, including a convenience store at the corner of the two roads here, 8206 Westmount Drive. Across from that, Ramos Pizza and Grill, the drill and field manufacturing operation beside Ramos Pizza and Grill, and of course the Ashley's Plumbing and Supply business located to the south, which the board voted relatively recently to expand the commercial zoning on that site as well. The request may be considered reasonable in the public interest and not spot zoning, mostly because if you look at the subject property, it is a very short distance from the subject property to the nearest existing GC General Commercial Zoning District down here at the intersection. And so it would not be a spot zone, it would be considered outgrowth of commercial development from that designated node at the intersection of South Halifax and Westmount. The Technical Review Committee considered this request back on December 13th and recommended approval subject to suggested development conditions. The planning board considered this request on January 17th. Mr. Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering addressed the board on behalf of the applicant in support of the request. There were 3 members of the public, Mr. Poland, Mr. Tyler, and Ms. McCall, listed in your report there, that addressed the board with concerns regarding potential impacts to air quality and water runoff, as well as increased traffic. There was also some discussion at that meeting about the requirements for a septic system for a facility that will be embalming bodies. It's my understanding from the project engineer that the state does not require any particular requirements over and above a normal commercial septic system for that type of business. As a result of the discussion at the planning board, the applicant agreed to attach 2 additional development conditions to the rezoning request. The first was to prohibit the development of a crematorium on the subject property. That was related to some of the adjacent property owners' concerns about air quality, as well as the fact that the applicant did not intend or plan to locate a crematorium on the subject property at this time. Secondly, they agreed to a condition to prohibit vehicular funeral processions from the subject property. That was related to a public concern about traffic. Of course, if they're only hosting very private, small, intimate gatherings at the property, there would be no need for funeral processions, and funeral processions for larger services would occur from the church site where those will be held. The planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request, subject to the development conditions that were suggested by the TRC, plus those 2 additional ones I just mentioned. This will be a one-motion process to either approve the zoning map amendment or deny the zoning map amendment. In either case, the board will need to adopt a statement of plan consistency and reasonableness, which has already been drafted for you in the report. I do want to highlight and go over the specific development conditions that are being recommended. Number 1, this is on page 9 of your report. Number 1, the subject property will be approved for the development of a funeral home only. Number 2, the subject property would not be approved for the development of a crematorium unless and until it would be specifically authorized by the Board of Commissioners through a separate rezoning and public hearing process at a later date. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that the applicant has no plans for a crematorium at this site. Number 3, the funeral home shall not conduct vehicular funeral processions from the subject property. Number 4, the subject property should be developed in accordance with the submitted and approved site plan only. Number 5, the vegetative screening buffers depicted on the site plan shall be revised, installed, maintained, and/or supplemented as necessary to satisfy the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance. I'll note that we will need some additional detail other than what is supplied on the current site plan to be able to verify that those buffers will be substantial enough to meet the requirements. We'll need some details about the particular plantings that are proposed. Number 6, prior to the construction of the funeral home, there are a list of other permits and documents that will need to be submitted, reviewed, approved, or issued. Those include an erosion and sedimentation control plan approval by the state, a driveway permit by the local DOT division office, on-site well and wastewater system permits by our health department, and then a stormwater permit, zoning permit, commercial building and trade permits issued by the Planning and Inspections Department. I will pause there and be happy to take any questions that the board has on the staff report before we proceed to the public hearing.
Any questions of Mr. Tyson at this time? Mr. Belfield?
Isn't that property close enough, the water line that's going down Halifax Road, that they could hook on?
So the water line that goes down Halifax Road, in my understanding, is a city of Rocky Mount water line, not a Nash County. And I believe they could connect to it, but they would have to voluntarily offer to annex the property into the city of Rocky Mount in order to take advantage of that water line. And at this time, the developer is planning to do an on-site well and not connect to the city of Rocky Mount water line.
Other
I
questions?
thought that was Nash County, that water line going down Halifax Road.
It becomes Nash County's.
Wasn't that one of the beginning projects that we started?
No, we recently have acquired the water line between Hunter Hill Road and 43 that the county owns from the city of Rocky Mount, but we don't own anything south of Hunter Hill Road. Property stated, Mr. Boone?
That's correct.
Yeah, this is just a comment. I was just wondering, they picked that property, I can know they own it, but for a funeral home, because they limiting themselves in operating a funeral home. That's just a comment, not a question.
Other questions of Mr. Tyson at this time? Thank you, Mr. Tyson. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing on this matter.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a public hearing. If there's someone here present today that wishes to speak on this item, either for or against, we would ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address, and the board would be glad to hear your comments. Anyone here wish to speak on this item? Yes, ma'am. You can come around my right side of the podium and we'll work fine. It is. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Weaver McCall, and my husband and I own a property at 3465 South Halifax Road that's immediately, that's beside the property that's proposed for rezoning, just right to the north of it. And we have some very strong concerns about the funeral home. I would like to say that, again, going back to the houses here on Halifax, this part of Halifax, do not have county water available, and so it's dependent upon wells. And as was recently discussed, there is no requirement for any type of special septic system, and the blood and the biohazardous blood, body fluids, and toxic embalming fluids and preps go right down the drain into that septic. I'm not a soil scientist nor air, or water or air quality specialist or engineer. My credentials are that of a licensed registered nurse in the state of North Carolina. I have a master's degree in healthcare systems outcomes management from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So I just mentioned that to say that that is the purview from which I'm evaluating the research and inquiries that I've done. Because of the fact of those biohazardous things and toxic chemicals going into the septic tank, and the way that the land is in that area, of course, it's by no means wetlands, but it is wet land. It doesn't drain well in the area. The property that my husband own, actually, when my grandparents were alive, were also a part of the complete parcel that is currently for sale, in addition to the rest of the land that my uncle owns behind that. It's required ditching in order to be used for agriculture purposes. We are bordered on our end, on the north side, to the side and rear of our acreage by what's shown on the maps as the Grape Branch, sometimes called the Great Branch. I'm not sure exactly which one it's really supposed to be. But we have significant concerns about the potential for contamination to the soils and the impact to the wells for the surrounding homes. And I'm not sure if any of the businesses that I think that are close enough on Westmount, when the city of Rocky Mount ran water to part of Westmount, I'm not sure if those businesses have city of Rocky Mount water or not. But that is my concern. According to North Carolina Administrative Code, and I can give you the number, regarding communicable disease control, the list contains no less than 71 significantly reportable diseases and conditions. That's a lot that and we all know that anybody could have any of these things and even not be known, and it is a risk, and these things can go into a regular home septic system. But that is much different, in my opinion, than the volume of possibilities that could exist right there and be possibly contaminating the soil, the drain fields, and into water systems. One other thing that I'll say with regard to that is the North Carolina Administrative Code also requires when a person dies that has a known reportable disease. And with regard to picking up and transferring bodies, the funeral home services personnel are required to be notified. And the reason I mention that is simply to illustrate that these things don't die arbitrarily the moment that a person does. They have various lifespans and live on various surfaces and mediums depending upon the nature or the particular communicable disease. And so that is of concern on which they thrive. I will mention, and I know that we are not in Michigan, we are in North Carolina, but I will make mention of at least one state that has set precedent, I don't know if there are others, that specifically, it's the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, that specifically prohibits funeral homes from disposing of these biohazardous materials and components that I've mentioned, the blood, body fluid, all of that, into a septic system. If they operate on a site that is maintained by a septic system, then they're required to have a separate standalone container for the receipt of those biohazardous but blood, body fluids, everything, and the chemicals that I've already mentioned. Again, and it's very specific. They do a really great job with all of the details about it. And it specifically states the purpose is because industrial or operational discharges, these types, and it lists all the things that I've said, and a couple of more, that if they are deposited to an on-site septic system, may contaminate the property and result in exposure to contaminants, or even possibly cause on-site system to prematurely fail. So I ask you to take that into consideration with the nature of the type of soil that is there on that and the number of people that it may impact if this happens, and with the wells and the very tricky access and exorbitant cost of tapping into the city of Rocky Mount, should not be a burden that the residents need to bear. And I would ask, with all due respect, that if it were you and your family being faced with that, you know, how you might feel about it. And I do strongly urge you to deny this rezoning request. Thank you for your service and your time.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Others that wish to speak on this matter? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Dale Poland. Mr. Poland was not here because he's deceased, but I am Dale Poland.
Could
And
you
I
state
have-
your address also, please?
So what?
State your address for the record also.
3421 South Halifax Road.
Thank you.
It's, again, real close. And just something to think about is that whole community, a lot of that community is families. And the reason why they didn't send water down there is because everybody on that road had wells, and they didn't want to give up their wells and have to buy water. So, and my reason for mentioning that is, we also have our own separate septic tanks, which have been there for a long time and have been approved and everything. but we do stop and think about if there's more coming into that close to our homes and where our water supplies is, that we is again the reason why we want to be real careful about the septic use for the funeral home, that it is it is controlled, and we don't need to worry about it. There is a church right across the road where I am. There's a lot of kids out playing sometimes. And so when there's kids and adults there, and it's an older community, I'm probably about as young as most of, other than our neighbors. I'm about the normal age. And as we get older, our immune systems may not be quite as strong. So again, we get very, very concerned about what our environment around us are. I know we've always been careful to maintain ours. I have had the septic tank cleaned out more than one time, and to make sure that I always had plenty of area, because again, we are aware that is a fairly wet area. We've had flooding in that area before. Not all the way to my house, but down the road where the crossover is under Halifax to the stream. We have a lot of water, or we have hurricanes, water backs up. And it could add to the problem, because all of that property is all intermingled. Anyway, again, I'm still concerned somewhat about the traffic, because I live in it every day. They're putting a new stoplight right down the road, not too far down the road from where I am on Halifax Road. And there's a lot of development going on up and down Halifax Road. So we need to continue to be aware of and watch it and see if we need to do anything different in the future. Right now, I understand we'll be okay, but in the future, with all the continuous growing that's going on out there, that's going to increase the traffic and could be a problem. And I go back to the fire department again. We don't want it to get congested to where the fire department cannot get out to help someone if they need to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bowler. Others that wish to speak on this public hearing? Mr. Varnell, good morning.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering here, representing the, developers, purchasers of the property. And Ms. McCall did a great job. I did the same thing the last time after the planning board meeting, and went and did a little bit of research about the septic systems and how funeral homes interact with those. And Michigan is the only state that I could find that has any regulations regarding funeral homes and septic systems. Currently, North Carolina has no regulations on that, and really identifies it no different than you would any commercial facility there as far as septic systems go. And they're acknowledging it's the same bodily fluids that you would have out of a normal house. Although I would argue that it's a little more in volume, but again, that's something that's regulated by the Nash County Health Department that will be permitted through those guys and will meet all the setbacks and requirements as far as septic systems and wells go. As far as stormwater goes, this site is subject to stormwater, so when it is developed, we'll have to meet the Nash County requirements for previous disposed to not make anything worse downstream. And I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you guys have on this one.
Questions of the engineer on this item, Mr. Outlaw?
Yeah, just regarding the embalming fluid and the bodily fluids, what do you see as the health department's requirements, responsibilities in monitoring and ensuring that there's not an issue that arises from that?
I don't know that the health department has any responsibility as far as monitoring it, just like it would with a normal commercial site that's on a septic system or a house. They wouldn't go out and monitor those. If there were issues that were visible, and you're seeing your backyard wet just like you would your house, then obviously you would contact the health department and they can come work through a solution with that. But there really are no methods or means to monitor that system the way it's set up.
The system in Michigan, What would be the cost of something like that? Did you do your research on that?
I did not look at the cost of that. Like I said, that was the only state that we could find that has any regulations on funeral homes on septic systems. So again, they go through a lot of items. Essentially, you're putting in a tank that's separate from the septic system that all that stuff goes into, and then it's hauled out like medical waste. So I don't know that in our situation, it'd be pretty cost prohibitive to have a whole separate tank and then a whole way to haul that material off-site, and then you're paying to dispose of it.
Do
in
you
another
think that's
location.
an unreasonable request?
It's certainly a request this board can make. But again, if 49 states aren't seeing it different, it's hard to argue. I don't know. It's really outside
That
of my.
really doesn't have any effect on me, 49 states.
I understand.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable thing to consider.
Right.
I'd really never given it that thought until Ms. McCall spoke. I think that's a very reasonable request. I think we need to probably look into that and see what the cost of a system like that would be to ensure.
Right.
And, you know, we're going to be meeting with our legislators soon, and I think that's an item that I'll ask our legislators about. Why do we not have some type of controls or requirements on disposing of fluids like this into the system without any follow-up or control on it? It just seems to me to be kind of not smart,
Right.
in my opinion.
Other questions?
I would agree with Mr. Outlaw that that type of system basically, as like all waste systems, would require a certain size tank and probably how often it would be disposed of. But I agree that we probably should look at that possibility to protect our citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Other comments?
One more question. You may or may not be able to answer this. This is more of an Ashe County question versus just a engineer question. Are you aware of other funeral homes in the county operating with septic systems?
I am not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
and so you're saying you don't have any proof that the medical waste won't go in the septic system, is that correct?
I guess the bodily fluids will go into the septic system. So the way it's set up right now, it would go out the drain just like the toilet goes out of your house without getting completely off topic. But I mean, it's essentially hooked up the same way.
And that would include the embalming liquid and whatnot?
The embalming liquid stays in the body, but yes.
mean, yeah.
Right, but the bodily fluids will go out, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Those
Something
body
else, Mr. Belfield?
fluids collected and transported to appropriate site wherever which I don't know, but the funeral home itself doesn't dispose of body fluids.
No, right now, if it's let's say it's in the city limits and it connects to a sewer system, it goes straight out the sewer system to the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, I thought the state had passed some laws on that years ago.
No, not that I'm
Way to
aware
handle
of.
that body fluid, because I can remember 30, 40 years ago where some funeral homes got in trouble carrying it to the landfill.
Right, I could understand that too.
And what they did, they put themselves out of business.
Right.
Others? Yeah, but the only question I would have is, and I will make a statement that, of course, the septic system is handled by a department in the county, the health department, and is generally not too overly considered in a rezoning matter, but there has been some concerns brought in this public hearing. Been a native of that area right there and having grown up there, know the soils well. Has any soil work been done? I shouldn't even ask this question, and it's got to be somewhat marginal, I would think, but where are you at in that process?
Yeah,
And it'll be handled by another department, I'm fully aware of that.
Yeah, the soils report has been done for the site, and with the exception of around the ditches and the buffers there, all the soils were fairly good on site. So they were coming up with a 1, which is typically a better type soil.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this matter?
Could I just make one clarification?
You can, ma'am. I would need you to come back to the podium so it'll be on the record.
I wanted to just clarify and readdress that question about the embalming fluids and to clarify that, yes, the embalming fluids do go into the septic as well with the high levels. I'm sorry, whoever asked, I apologize. With the high levels of formaldehyde and other toxic chemicals. And that, other than the research that I've done, was verified to me previously with direct conversations to the two funeral home owners that are the potential buyers in this case. And I just wanted to clarify that. And also, I wanted to offer this printouts from the Michigan system, if I could, to you all.
You want to enter it in the record, Madam Clerk? Thank you. Others that wish to speak? Seeing no one, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? That motion carries. Have Mr. Tyson back at the podium. Any other questions that they have on this item?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just wonder, and maybe I shouldn't speak to Ms. McCall directly, but would you have any issue with the funeral home with a system like Michigan has to properly collect and dispose of those fluids? It seems to me like the funeral home people have addressed many of the concerns that the residents had. I'm just looking for common ground. And I hear your concern, and I'm sympathetic to it. And I really think today that we need to consider tabling this thing for the developer to come back and look at the potential of installing such a system, if that's something that you felt like you could live with. It seems to me like it's a reasonable way to collect these fluids and dispose of them. Well, I'm just making general comments, but I just wondered what your thoughts.
Okay. I would feel better about it, for sure. I'm not necessarily, feeling some kind of way about a funeral home itself. I'm a nurse. Don't get freaked out by, dead bodies and all that being nearby. The main thing is that the concern about that. I would question, and I'll just play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I would question with there not being monitoring, because as has been mentioned, there is a cost involved with those systems, not necessarily not only the installation, and I don't know that cost, but the formal removal by a bona fide medical waste service provider that then deals with that. And what still could go into the drains that we don't know about. I'll just say it out loud. So it would be better, definitely would be better than nothing at all.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so,
Thank you, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
Adam, one concern I have that I've expressed before on rezoning matters like this is you've got a couple of restrictions here that were put on, one of them being no funerals, possessions leaving there. And of course, in your mind, if you get complaints about that happening, what is our enforcement ability of such a restriction put on a property like
Right.
that? I'm very cautious to put open-ended restrictions on properties when I honestly feel like we don't have the mechanism in place to enforce those when the complaints start coming. What happens when that complaint comes?
I share that concern with development condition number 3, which has to do with vehicular funeral processions. Certainly, the county, from a zoning and planning perspective, does not have the ability to respond in the moment to stop a funeral procession like law enforcement perhaps could. The only way we could follow up with that would be through a notice of violation letter that would provide the property owner 30 days to respond. And then, of course, if we recorded several funeral processions that were outside of the permission granted by the board, then we could go before the court and request a court order to stop it. I share your concern with adopting conditions that aren't very easily enforced by the planning department, but it was something that the planning board felt very strongly about after hearing the complaints from the community.
Well, I think we realize due to other cases we've had to deal with restrictions on like that, they can become lengthy, they can become costly for the county when we get into courts and things of that nature. I would just hope we would think long and hard. I'm not stating about this particular one, but be careful what kind of restrictions we allow to be put on properties in the future that would cause future planning boards and future commissioners trouble trying to enforce something. Any other comments? Seeing none, pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, again, I would state that I'd like to see us table this matter to come back next month and give us some additional information on this system that Ms. McCall referenced.
I have a motion to table which doesn't,
I mean, short of that, then I'm going to vote to deny it. That would be my motion. And I'd like to see this potential for this system if that's something that, you know, I wouldn't want it being put in the ground behind me, quite frankly.
I'm going to take your motion as a motion to table with the time specific of our next commission meeting. Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Combs. First, I think, many others following. Any questions on the motion? Yes, ma'am.
Just a point of discussion on the motion. I would like to see us receive some expertise from someone in our environmental health section that knows about septic systems and has actual knowledge about the disposal of these type of fluids in septic systems and in wet areas such as this one.
Let me deal with the motion at hand, because a motion to table doesn't allow for discussion. We've got to vote it yes or no, and then I'll take discussions on what you'd like to see before we come back. All in favor of the motion to table, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Now, I think it would be very pertinent, I'll go ahead and enter your comment for the record. Is
Thank
there
you.
something else you'd like to say?
No, sir.
Okay, any other things that this board needs to see prior to coming back?
Well, I just would like to say that I'd like to see us have this discussion with our legislators. I'd like that to be one of the points we discuss with our legislators, because it seems a reasonable request to me, and I think it's something that we need to put before them to consider legislation on it.
Okay.
I'd like that to be a part of the record, Madam Clerk.
And
Mr. Belfield?
we are tabling it until next month.
We're tabling it to the next commission meeting, provided that it comes through the planning board to come back to us again. It does not go back to the planning board?
Not unless the board votes to refer it back.
I don't think we're doing that.
Okay.
So I'll stand corrected, Mr. Belfield will come back to us at our March meeting with additional information,
Yeah,
provided to us hopefully before the meeting.
Yeah, I think it should, and that means you got to go to work to get the request that was in the motion.
I would like to clear up one other item, because we stump a toe on this once in a while. Mr. Outlaw having made the motion, generally, we would not have a second public hearing on the motion. Is that suitable with you?
I'd prefer to hear from the people.
So you won't have a
Always.
second public hearing on the
I'll
motion?
always prefer to hear from the people.
Okay.
And one other comment that was made, I think, by Ms. Leggett, are there other funeral homes operating in the county under circumstances like are being proposed here by the developer? I'd like to know I don't know who needs to do that research, but I'd like to know, and if so, have they had any issues?
Health Department would have that. I'm sure.
And all the funeral homes in Nash County are in municipalities.
I wouldn't be able to sit here and answer that question, but I think the Health Department can provide us if there are any funeral homes currently on the septic system. So Adam's making notes, I'm sure
They're
we'll get
close
that.
enough that they're on the septic system.
Right. Other comments? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just to summarize, the board would like to hold a second public hearing, which will mean we'll need to re-advertise since today's public hearing was closed. We would return with some information about the specifications and costs of the septic systems required for funeral homes in the state of Michigan. The board has also requested some expertise from environmental health regarding septic systems, as well as historical information about whether we have funeral homes operating within the county on septic systems and whether there have been any issues. I would add to that I would like to consult with the county attorney between now and then. It is my general understanding that there are some state laws that prohibit a county from adopting environmental protection requirements that are greater than what's required at the state. It may be different if it's a condition of a rezoning, but certainly it appears that this would be over and above what the state requires, and so I'll also consult with the county attorney on the legality of that requirement before we move forward.
All right. The only thing you mentioned that concerns me, you mentioned the word cost with a Michigan system. I don't think this board should get involved in
Okay.
cost simply because what it costs in Michigan has no bearing what it costs here, and I don't think we really want to be involved in setting what it cost may be for a system. That would be up to the applicant to determine what that cost would be.
All right. Noted.
Everything he said, cover everything we got, I think.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. While you're at the podium, we'll move on from that particular item to item number 8, which is another public hearing on the UDO text amendment request A221201 off-site waste water system for multiple lot/structures. Mr. Tyson?
This item also concerns septic systems. This time it is regular residential septic systems. However, it is those that are located off-site, meaning on a different piece of property from the home that they serve. Our ordinance includes standards already for septic systems that are located off-site that serve an individual lot or home. And the planning department cooperates with the health department in enforcing those standards. Those situations are rare. They mostly occur now where you have off-site septic systems that were installed prior to land record keeping having the precision it has today, and so those are discovered after the fact. It is a very rare circumstance for a single home to have a septic system located on a lot other than the lot that that home's located on. What the ordinance does not have regulations for yet are off-site wastewater or septic systems that serve multiple lots or residential homes. Developer Thomas White, who is, of course, working with the assistance of Stocks Engineering, is working to develop the Choplin subdivision on South NC Highway 231 in the southern portion of Nash County. The sketch plan for that subdivision was approved by the Planning Board back on December 20th of 2021. After investigating the specific soil conditions of the property, the developer is proposing the use of off-site wastewater systems for a portion of that residential development in order to make the most efficient use of the areas with suitable soil. I don't want to focus too intently on the specific project because this is a text amendment that would apply throughout the county's jurisdiction were it to be adopted. So I haven't included any details about the particular plan. Instead, we'll talk in general terms about what this requirement would allow. Mr. White submitted this text amendment request in order to allow multiple residential lots to be served by an off-site wastewater system in accordance with the already existing requirements and standards for that type of system in the North Carolina General Statutes and Administrative Code. These off-site wastewater systems are regulated by North Carolina's on-site wastewater protection branch and permitted by our local health department. I've had multiple conversations with representatives of the North Carolina on-site wastewater protection branch about this type of septic system and the requirements that they have. The homes served by the systems would typically still have their own individual septic tank located on the building lot with the home, but the wastewater would be pumped to a shared septic drain field and repair area that would be located on a separate property elsewhere within the subdivision. That property would typically be owned and controlled by a property owners association because it includes the interests of all the homes that feed into that drain line. The tanks are connected to the drain field by a supply line that runs along either the subdivision's interior road rights-of-way, or in the event it needs to cross an area that doesn't align with a road right-of-way, it would have a private utility easement to cross that privately owned property. These off-site wastewater systems must comply with statewide technical standards and regulations administered by the North Carolina On-Site Wastewater Protection Branch. These standards are used in many other counties, is my understanding from the state, but our particular planning and zoning ordinance does not explicitly recognize them, and so that's the purpose for the text amendment. This is not something new that's being proposed specifically for Nash County. This is a known and existing type of septic system that is permitted and practiced throughout the state. They are typically designed by either a licensed professional engineer, or there are provisions for a licensed soil scientist who's been specifically certified as an authorized on-site wastewater evaluator to design them. The developer is required to establish an off-site wastewater system agreement with the Property Owners Association that outlines the ownership and control and transfer of that common area that contains the septic system. It also outlines the maintenance, repair, and funding responsibility for the system. The Property Owners Association then is required by the state to establish separate agreements with each individual landowner whose home would be served by that shared wastewater system. They're also required to have an agreement or a contract with a company that employs an authorized and certified operator in responsible charge. And that's a private company employee that holds that certification from the state, who's required to operate, maintain, and inspect the system components that make up that common septic system. The ORC is required to inspect the site at least once per year and to provide a monitoring report to the local health department within 30 days of that inspection. That inspection includes their recorded observations, any incidences of malfunction, and the maintenance activities that are performed. The next section of your report shows the actual text changes that would be made under 10-7.2B. First of all, we would add a heading to our current off-site wastewater systems to clarify that those requirements that are already adopted are for individual lots or principal structure. You'll note that existing requirement D is crossed through and to be considered for removal, because since the adoption of these rules, the Nash County Environmental Health Department has found that problematic to enforce, because septic systems are not permitted based on a minimum amount of land. They're permitted based on a specific design of the actual tank and drain lines. And so letter D over the years since this was adopted, which I would guess is probably 15 plus years, letter D has become problematic in that it's difficult for the Environmental Health Department to comply with that. And so we're proposing the removal of letter D. The number 2 section is the new section, off-site wastewater systems for multiple lots or principal structures. It would read, 2 or more lots or principal structures may be served by wastewater systems located on property under common ownership or control that is separate from the building lots, provided that the off-site wastewater systems satisfy all the applicable standards and requirements of the North Carolina General Statutes 130A, Article 11, and 15A, North Carolina Administrative Code 18A.1900. And that the systems are permitted by the Nash County Health Department in consultation with the North Carolina on-site wastewater protection branch as necessary. This request is consistent with our recently adopted comprehensive land use plan, specifically Section 7, Infrastructure and Utilities, Objective 5.2, which recommends the establishment of standards for private utility systems. And certainly this could fall into the category of private utility systems because it will be maintained by the company contracted with the Property Owners Association. The Technical Review Committee considered this request on December 13th and recommended approval. This was based on the statewide technical standards and regulations already established for off-site wastewater systems and the oversight provided by the ongoing monitoring requirements. To give you an idea of the TRC's perspective, I personally live on a lot with an on-site septic system. There is no ongoing monitoring of that system until a problem occurs. And then when that problem occurs, I'm responsible as the property owner for fixing that problem. In this particular case, the septic systems are a little more complex because they do have to transfer the waste from the septic system to the common area that has a drain field. But to mitigate the risk of that slightly more complex system, you have the requirement for the ongoing maintenance and inspection, which is something a private individual septic system doesn't have. You also have the fact that all of the homeowners that are engaged in that septic system share the burden of any repair and maintenance, whereas a private septic system repair is solely and entirely on the individual property owner. So the TRC felt that those two aspects help to mitigate any additional risk that is involved with a slightly more complex septic system than your run-of-the-mill, everyday individual septic system that we're all familiar with. The Planning Board considered this request on January 17th. Mr. Varnell with Stocks Engineering addressed the board on behalf of the applicant in support of the request. There were no members of the public present to address the board with regard to the request at that time. The Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request and the suggested statement of plan consistency. This will be a one-motion process to approve or deny and to adopt the statement of plan consistency. And again, the request is consistent with the land use plan, which recommends the establishment of standards for private utility systems. Mr. Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering is here today to provide more detail as needed on these types of septic systems during the public hearing. And prior to that, I will pause and be glad to take any questions on the staff report.
Any questions on staff report from commissioners at this time?
One,
Mr. Belfield?
this stormwater, is it treated before it goes into the, I assume what you have, holding ponds?
So this request doesn't really involve stormwater, which is surface runoff water. If a stormwater pond is called for, then that pond retains the water and holds it to allow the phosphorus and nitrogen to settle to the bottom so that it does not wash off into the water supply system. The amendment we're looking at today is actually about your domestic wastewater that comes from your sinks, your bathtubs, your toilets of a residential home. And so that water is not treated, but it goes into a septic system before the liquid portion is drained out into the underground drain field. So we're actually talking about domestic wastewater here.
Other questions?
Mr. Tyson, is there currently regulation of property owner and homeowner associations in the county?
There are requirements that a developer establish a property owners association at the time that they record a subdivision that has some feature that would require a property owners association. Typically, that would be if they have common area that has to be maintained. In this particular case, it would certainly be required, because not only would the developer be setting out common area, but that common area would be vital to the wastewater disposal of multiple homes within the subdivision. So it would not be possible to propose this type of septic system without the planning department ensuring that a property owners association was established along with the creation of the subdivision.
How about after the establishment of that group?
Typically,
What
the
did they
property
go?
owners association establishment would contain enough language and requirements that if any problems arose with that, the membership of the property owners association could take that up in civil court outside of county regulation.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Tyson, back up to item 1, off-site wastewater system for an individual lot.
Yes, sir.
You're taking out item D.
Correct.
Would you walk back through that one more time? 'Cause
So
I do have some
item-
concern about that.
Item D requires that when you have an off-site wastewater, well, first of all, that entire section establishes rules for when you have a wastewater system serving an individual home that's not located on the same property. So typically, might have it in a neighbor's front yard. You would have a utility easement over that septic system that allows you access to it to repair it. I believe the purpose of establishing these rules, I was not there, but I believe the purpose of the rules was to establish some extra requirements for individual property owners who might be purchasing a home that has an off-site septic system, to make it less likely that that property owner would suffer some sort of catastrophic septic system failure. So in letter A, there's a requirement that it be on contiguous property, and there's a minimum distance from the home that's being served that the septic system can be. Letter B requires that the North Carolina, Nash County Environmental Health Department be involved in permitting the system, which of course is true anyway. Letter C requires that the repair area go ahead and be installed. In a normal septic system, the repair area may never be needed, but because the system is off-site, it requires the repair area to be installed up front. Letter D has the same requirement for an operator in the new letter D, has the same requirement to have an operator in responsible charge, contracted to inspect and report on the system. But letter D states, the original letter D that's crossed out, an area 3 times the size of the minimally recommended requirement by Nash County Environmental Services shall be set aside on the special purpose lot for the off-site system. When Nash County Environmental Health permits a septic system, they don't permit a specific amount of land. They permit a specific system design. So they permit a size and location for the tank. They permit a length and size for the drain pipes and the drain field, and then a repair area. What they never specify on their permit is a perimeter of how much land that system will take up. If they did, we could easily multiply that by 3 and require that to be set aside for an off-site septic system. But the health department is not set up to function in an amount of land. Their permitting process is focused on a specific design for a system and a specific design for a repair area. So in years past, it has been difficult to meaningfully enforce the original letter D because of the way that septic system permits are issued.
I understood all of that. My real question is, apparently at the time this was passed, and I do recall when we did it, the board felt the need to not have a septic system area and a repair area, but also an additional requirement in addition to that. You're now proposing that we give that additional area up. Is there not a better way to define that? And I see that you're putting in the system, apparently you're putting in the second system or the.
Whether it's needed now or not.
Whether it's needed now or not.
Right.
Which I would tell you that's not general practice.
Correct.
I mean, we don't, that's not getting done, is what I'm telling you. It may say that here, but it's not. But you're asking us to give up that third area, which was thought out and agreed to at that point in time simply because of the complexity. If 1 failed, 2 failed, there's no other alternates for that homeowner because it's dealing with land off-site.
Sure. I think as an alternative to eliminating that requirement, we could leave it in with today's text amendment if the board decides to proceed. And instead of eliminating it, we could consult the health department about a rewording of that would be more functional, but would require some additional land in addition to the system and the repair area.
I'd like to see us consider that, but we can handle that after the public hearing. I
Okay.
just needed to understand it prior to going in.
I don't think the way that it's worded works well, but I think maybe we could come up with a different wording that addresses the same thing that you just said, which is additional area above and beyond the system and the repair area.
Okay, thank you. No other questions. I'd entertain a motion to go into public hearing on this item.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now opening a public hearing on this text amendment, and to someone here that wishes to speak for or against it, we'd ask that you come forward at this time and let the board know what's on your mind. State your name and address when you reach the podium. Anyone here wish to speak on this item? Mr. Barnett?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Kevin Varnell with Stocks Engineering. I think Adam did a great job of trying to explain it. If I need to go through it a little better, I'll be happy to do that. I do want to point out, this is not something that's new. The state already has a process to approve it and review it, and ultimately, it has multiple names through different counties, but it's called Centralized System, Community Septic System, and a lot of different other names. But right now, currently, we have Edgecombe, Franklin, Halifax, Wake, Warren, Wayne, and Wilson all have this system in their ordinance. And again, it's pretty straightforward. I think it's one of those systems where, again, it is a little more complex. However, there is a lot more oversight. So going back to the monitoring you mentioned earlier, this one would actually be monitored by a licensed professional that's going to go through and have to report that to the state. So it's not a system that's just running and waiting for something to fail. There's actually an operator that's going to be operating the system. So I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have.
Questions of Mr. Varnell on this item? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So who's to monitor this thing 10 years down the road? This HOA is probably maybe defunct by that time and not operation functional. Who's going to require that thing to be inspected once a year? Because I just don't
The state.
think we can put that trust in a HOA.
Yeah, no, it's a state. So it's a state permit, and this, just like a wastewater treatment plant or a community water system that has a well, the state is requiring that testing to go on. They have to turn in those reports monthly, and there will actually be someone from the state that'll come out and actually inspect the system annually as well. So there is zero chance that this system is going to operate without the state coming in and doing inspections or them having a licensed operator. So ultimately, because they have to have that licensed operator and he has to be there monthly, the HOA won't be able to dissolve because they'll have to obviously pay, for that private consultant to be there and for that system to operate and run.
You know,
So the state is the one doing the oversight.
So the real reason for having to do this is you're going to put a house on a lot that will not perk, is that right?
So ultimately, what happens on a lot of sites, we have a large area in a certain space that has good soils. And so what we want to do is concentrate the good soils where we can pump all the off-site systems to and use that good soils there for our septic system versus having to kind of scatter it and piecemeal it throughout the site. And ultimately what happens when we do a lot is we'll have a 30,000, 40,000 square foot lot, but only 10,000 square feet of it would actually perk in the front corner. In this case, the entire system will perk. The entire area that's reserved for it will be able to handle that septic system. So yes, it does allow us to get additional lots that we normally would not have gotten because of the soils, but it also adds in a lot of extra things that take care of any bad soils that could happen on a lot.
But aren't you losing? I mean, my first thought was, why you put this house on this lot that won't perk and you use good land to put a septic system on? Why not put lots on that good land and leave this not desirable with no house on it? I mean, it looks like to me you're just putting houses on land that won't perk, and you're using good land that you could put a house on.
Yeah, sometimes when you're laying out a subdivision, it just doesn't lay out as perfect as you would like, or the land that has good soils isn't in the best location to try to get a layout. So, I mean, ultimately, it works out to, it's just a better layout if we do it the way we've shown it.
Other questions? Mr. Parnell, educational question. The sewer that leaves each individual lot that goes to this, each individual septic tank that goes to this common drain field, do you see it sometimes gravity, sometimes pumped? And does each one have its own individual line to get to that common area?
No, so the way it's set up is each home, each lot will have its own septic tank, just like you would on a normal lot.
Sure.
The gray water, so all the solids stay in the tank, the gray water now leaves that, it will go into a pump tank. And probably now, 30% of our homes have pump tanks that pump up to their septic fields on a lot. So it'll be a pump tank that pumps up to a common line that's in the street, and that common line will take it down to the common field.
Is that common line always gravity?
No, that common line will probably be pressurized.
So who maintains that pump
The,
or that gravity?
the HOA will maintain it, but it's part of that private system as well.
Okay.
So the consultant, whoever the operator is that's running that system, has to run all of that.
Okay. So you have a pump tank that the individual property owner is responsible for?
That's right. And that's where their responsibility will stop once it crosses the right of way.
Is that generally a grinder pump or just a pump?
It will have to be a grinder pump because of the size.
Okay.
Now, it could be a pump because all the solids stay back, but we'll have to figure that out with the state when we do the permitting.
Okay. But the line, it's inducing itself into a force main, which is very common east of here, closer to the coast where all sewer is done that way.
That's right. There are entire towns that are run this way.
Because you don't have the gravity to make the system work. I got that. Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Just trying to understand.
Yes, sir.
So, I buy one of these lots and I've got a septic tank and a lift pump that sends it to the line. Okay, well, then I got to help share all these costs from that point, from my lot on. So now I got 2 people living in my house and the next door neighbor's got 10. So they're developing 5 times more wastewater than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to pay the same cost to maintain this thing that they do.
Well, one option that we've seen is put a meter on the water system. So obviously you'll have a meter that tells you how much water you're using, and that's how much prorated you would pay to the septic system. So there's certainly ways to manage that and mitigate that if that's the case. But you're absolutely right. If there's 6 people living in this house, they're using twice the water that a 3-person house is using. And typically that's based on the meter, just like you would with the county, city, Rocky Mount, every house done. You don't meter the sewer, you meter the water coming into the house.
Other thoughts, questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item for or against? Seeing no movement, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bellfield. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? The public hearing is now closed. Does any commissioner have any additional clarification they need from staff?
I have one more concern, maybe this goes to Kevin. How many lots do you gain in this particular subdivision? How many lots do you gain by doing this rather than if you'd have just used that good land to put lots on?
This subdivision is already approved, so we actually won't gain any lots. It's the same, it's a net 0 on this
But
one.
you gonna lose some because you got,
We could potentially lose, we'll have to reevaluate or readjust property lines, but we haven't evaluated how many we would lose if we didn't do the system.
Other questions, concerns?
Got a point of discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
So my concern is not so much for the safety or the risk in installing a system like this, being it will be monitored. My concern more is for the burden that would be placed on the property owners, having to maintain a property owners association just for the sake of wastewater disposal. Until land becomes more scarce here, I don't think that this would be a good rule to adopt. I don't think it'd be in the best interest of the county. I understand that in some areas of the county, water can be limiting, which we're trying to abate with our water projects. And I'm not interested in developing this new rule or making this rule change.
Other comments?
I would concur with Ms. Leggett's comments.
Other comments? If not, I entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we deny this UDO text amendment request.
I do want to make sure the board understands that this text amendment would be all properties in the county. I should have said that earlier. Mr. Tyson did say it, but we're not talking about a specific project. I have a motion on the floor to deny. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign?
No,
No,
no.
All right, I have a motion on the floor and a second. I was not able to determine the vote, therefore I would ask for all in favor of the motion, let it be known by raising your hand. And all in favor of the motion, let it be known by raising your hand.
Wait a minute, do that again.
You said,
I didn't say it quite right, I apologize. I apologize for that. All not in favor of the motion, all opposed to the motion, let it be known by raising your hand. I'm sorry.
you said opposed?
Opposed to the motion to deny. Okay, that motion carries on a 4-3 vote.
Actually, that motion failed.
Failed on a 4-3 vote.
Motion failed.
Distinct difference in the way I said it, the way you said it, sir. I appreciate your correction. The next item will be item number 9, which is a approval of the Nash County Community Services Block Grant. I'm going to ask for about,
Mr. Chairman,
excuse me, did I skip
would we
something?
now have a motion to approve? Because we haven't taken any action on that item. We had a motion to deny that failed.
You're exactly right.
Mr.
Agree with
Chairman, I
that?
make,
Okay, all right, I will now entertain a motion to approve the item number 8.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we adopt the statement of plan consistency and approve the text amendment as stated.
All right, I have a motion
Second.
to approve and a second by Commissioner Belfield, motion by Commissioner Wilkins. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by a raise of hand. All opposed by a raise of hands. That motion does indeed carry. I appreciate the assistance in keeping the chairman straight on that item. Chairman will now call for about a 13-minute recess at the request of a commissioner, and we will return and begin back on item number 9. Back in session at this time, we're on item number 9, which is approval of the Nash County Community Services Block Grant for Nash Edgecombe Wilson Community Action, and I'll call on the very patient Ms. Cole to make this presentation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry we kept you so long this morning.
It's okay. Thank you so very much.
You get an education in civics, I
I
guess.
did. I was like, this is interesting. We're not going to be before you long. This is our annual application that is due to the Office of Economic Opportunity in Raleigh. We conducted a community needs assessment, and it was completed and board approved June 2022. During that community needs assessment, we were able to verify that there were 3, well, really 4 priorities, but 3 specifically for the CSBG grant. The first one was safe and affordable housing, or the lack of safe and affordable housing. And one of the things that we want to include in this year's proposal is that we have more education on tenants' rights. So we have been seeing a lot of our clients from both Section 8 and CSBG who we have to do a lot of mediating between the landlord and the tenant. So we want to do some extra education training on tenants' rights. Employment and job security was the second one, and that's an ongoing one. We will try to strengthen our partnerships with NC Works. We have actually started that work this year. Affordable childcare for infants and preschools. That's not specific to CSBG, but our Head Start program, and we are trying to convert some slots from our preschool to actually serve infants and toddlers next year. But the one that's what's surprising to us, not necessarily in our community needs assessment, but in our internal assessments, was senior citizens. So we are receiving a lot of phone calls internally from senior citizens who are having a hard time paying their utility payments or going to the grocery store because of inflation. So we have had to increase our services to our emergency assistance to senior citizens, and we are planning to do more of that in the July 1, 2023 application, which is before you. I have Mr. Moody, our CSBG director, who will give you highlights on our program improvements or our program outputs and outcomes that was submitted to you all last year and you approved. And then we would just ask for any questions and comments and approval of this application.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Mr. Moody?
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today?
Good morning.
I just wanted to give an update on our progress from the last 2 years. We've increased our number of clients served from 55 to 95 clients served between Nash, Edgecombe, and Wilson County. Our objective for 21-22 was to move 20 families above poverty. We actually planned in all to serve 90. We achieved 178, putting our percentage at 198% achieved. For Nash County in particular, our target was to serve 30 clients. We actually achieved 51, putting our percentage achieved at 170% for CSBG. Far as our CARES, which is our emergency assistance for the COVID pandemic, we served 744 clients in all, and in Nash County, we served 234 clients, which would have included helping them with back rent payments and also any arrears utility payments that clients may have been impacted by for the COVID-19 pandemic. For this fiscal year, we are still planning to serve 95 clients, which was the same for 2022, but we're actually currently at 115. The number of low-income participant families rising above poverty would be 25. The number of participant families obtaining employment would be 35. The number of participant families who are employed and obtain better employment would be 35. The number of jobs with medical benefits obtained, 20. The number of participant families completing education training programs, 35. The number of participant families securing standard housing would be 60. The number of participant families provided emergency assistance would be 50. The number of participant families provided employment support would be 95. The number of participant families provided educational support, 25. And the average number of annual income participant families experiencing change. We don't really do that measure. It's based off clients we serve. But if you go back to the employment support, which is 95, we do try to, our main goal of CSBG is to help our families become self-sufficient. And of course, employment is a big aspect of being self-sufficient. So we encourage all of our clients to participate in our job readiness trainings, resume building, and any potential partners we may have with jobs already in Nash and Edgecombe, Wilson County.
Any questions for us?
Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Belfield?
I'm looking at the number of jobs with medical benefits. It's very low, 15, well, mostly small businesses.
Yes,
It's small businesses and a combination. So when we were doing the community needs assessment and had our focus group, a lot of focus group participants stated that they would rather find their own insurance than to take away from their check. So we're kind of seeing a double-edged sword. So there are a lot of companies that are offering it, and there's a lot of participants or employees who are not taking that option and saying they're going to find it on their own.
But the employee can take out health insurance. And the employer doesn't participate at all.
No, the employer does. The employer allows for the option of health insurance, but the employee will choose not to. and probably go through the Affordable Care system and get their own insurance.
Okay.
Other questions?
Just-
Mr. Arrington?
Okay, well, your goal is to move clients off the roads of what you call poverty or into self-sufficiency. So how many clients, I know you say you serve like 95, how many clients actually got gainful employment that took them off of the public funding road?
So for Nash County, our goal was 30, and we actually achieved 51 clients to be above the poverty guideline that graduated from our program last year.
Okay, so they all found gainful employment?
Yes, sir.
That took, okay.
But I do want to say that doesn't necessarily mean that they've made enough to get off of public, any kind of public assistance that they, so to meet our threshold, they did go above what they were making when they first came into our program. But I don't want to make to allude that because of that, they're now not on any public assistance because they still may be getting subsidized care for their child or whatever. So I just don't want to say, yeah, because of us, they're now not on any public assistance.
Anyway, they are on the right track of trying to get
Yes, sir.
above
They are on the right track. Yes, sir.
the poverty line. All right.
Other questions?
Are these statistics for all 3 counties combined, or this Nash, just Nash?
He gave you both, I think, Mr. Belfield.
Yes, we
Yes,
gave you
sir.
all 3.
All 3? Well, I thought that, but I thought I better ask to make sure.
Ms. Cole, you said you wanted to increase your tenant rights, education moving forward. Is your goal to give the education to the tenant, or are you including some landlords as well?
We actually want to do both. Just
You wanna
last
do
week, I
both,
spoke
okay.
with Legal Aid, and they are going to help us with some of that advocacy because
Right.
they are seeing an increased calls in tenants calling, complaining, or landlords calling and complaining as well.
Right.
So we're going to try to partner and do that together.
Gotcha, okay. I was hoping that it might be that way. That's good.
Got one more question?
Yes, sir.
One more question. How is the Head Start program?
Head Start's doing pretty good. We are seeing a decline, of course, because there are some parents who haven't gone back to work, so they're keeping their children home. Or we have also discovered that there are a lot of parents who are working in Wake County or in different counties, and they're taking their child to childcare in those counties where they work. So we are currently funded for 633 slots, but across the nation, thanks to COVID, no one is really meeting all of their funded enrollment. We are at 515. We are still recruiting. We still have all 8 centers open in all 3 counties. So we are also, the one struggle in our Head Start program is finding qualified teachers. So now we are really struggling with workforce at the age of retirement, but a lack of enthusiasm to be in early childhood because of lack of pay. That is just kind of causing us to have to come up with very different ways to try to bring people into becoming a teacher or a teacher assistant.
Is your restriction to get to 633 caused by lack of teachers, or you're meeting what comes in?
It's a combination of both. So it's parents' choice to either not go back to work or haven't gone back to work yet because they can't find anything, or they're moving to Wake County, or, if they work in Wake County,
Right.
they're actually putting their child in a child care center in Wake County. So we're just trying to use our community needs assessment and talk to so we talked to some of the subsidy representatives here in Nash County for child care subsidy, and they're helping us with their waiting list, so we can call those parents and say, would you like to apply for Head Start? Because we have a slot at our A.J. Richardson site or our Old Parish site, so we're just trying to partner through.
Do you have a reciprocal of what you described happening where you have a person that lives in Wake County coming to Nash County that puts your kids in one here? Does that ever happen?
It probably does, but because with Head Start, we can only serve the children who are actually residents of the county. We wouldn't see that part as much.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Entertain a motion to adopt the request.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins, there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Belfield. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. We appreciate you being here, appreciate your patience, and
Thank you.
certainly
Thank you.
appreciate what y'all do for us. We're now on item number 10, and I'll ask Ms. Sumner to begin this. Another very patient lady every month. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Really excited to be here this morning because we have our vendor revow here with us today. And,
I got 3 pages of questions here.
oh, good, good. Okay. First of all, I'd just like to introduce Mr. Gary Piner with Piner Appraisal Incorporated. And we have Gene Roundtree that's working with Mr. Piner. Mr. Jim Wren, who's with Piner Appraisal as well. And we also have Eddie McCoy, who is our real estate supervisor here this morning. This is part of our revow team right here. So
And we
first,
don't want Mr. McCoy with Piner in the next 10, 15 years, right?
no, sir, we do not. I don't know if anybody who knows the county as well as he does. So the first thing this morning, just like to remind the board about what the revaluation is and what the purpose is. The revaluation is an in-depth process of reappraising all the real property in the county at its current market value, and it is mandated by the North Carolina General Statute 105-286. Revaluations ensure property owners bear an equitable share of the total tax burden proportional to the value of the taxable property they own. It provides the basis for determining a property owner's share of the taxes that support schools, transportation, parks, public health programs, libraries, and law enforcement and fire protection. The amount of taxes paid depends on the property value and the tax rate set each year by our elected officials. And as mandated, all property must be reassessed at least every 8 years. And as you're aware, we were advanced a year, so we are now on a 7-year cycle. In August of 2022, the staff met with Piner Appraisal and their staff, and they were fitted with ID badges so that they could, when they're out in the community. They've also established offices here in the county for the appraisal staff to begin their work. And data has been provided to the appraisal company in order to begin their field work as well. And we've also created our 2024 reval year to begin data testing. And with that, I would just like to turn it over to Mr. Piner.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners, Manager, and all present. Thank you, Ms. Doris. And but by the way, Ms. Doris and Eddie and all their staff, they're just great to work with. We're so happy for the opportunity to be here with you today, and thank you so much for entrusting us with your 2024 revaluation. We are dedicated to delivering all the people in Nash County a quality job and hopefully cementing our relationship going forward. We're happy also to have Mr. Gene Roundtree and Mr. Jim Wren, who y'all might know a little bit, working with us on this job. Gene, I think it's the 4th job you've worked with us on, I believe, the 4th reval. They know the county, of course, which is a big plus. Basically, the job that we're doing for y'all, we're doing a desktop residential review. We're going to visit the commercial and industrial properties, making data corrections as needed. Also, something that we're providing is new digital images of all the improved properties. They will be certainly a big benefit in doing the desktop review, and they'll also benefit the county moving forward. A little bit about the way that we do these. About a year and a half ago, we had a 30-year programmer He wrote some software for us initially so we could use tablets in the field and go paperless. There are other models like that out there, but we feel like ours is the best. And from that evolved the digital imaging division that we now have. And the way that we do it, we basically 360-degree cameras, we film the neighborhoods, we have our reviewers select the best frame for each parcel because you have multiple frames for each one. And then our software is tied to the county GIS, so it automatically assigns that photo to that property, that parcel identification number. We're very proud of that, and it's fast and efficient. So we're about 85% complete, 80 to 90% complete with that phase right now. And then, of course, Gene and Jim, the residential review will follow the pictures. You'll have nice 4K digital images to look at. You show you the condition of the structures. With all that being said, Gene and Jim are going to speak more specifically about the reval process, where we are and where we're going. So at this time, I'm going to bring up Mr. Gene Roundtree.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
board members. Good to see everybody. It's just to see a lot of familiar faces in the county, and it's good to be back here. Pretty much, revaluation, as Doris said, is an opportunity to bring all your properties up to the value they should be, equity and uniformity. And what Jim and I started doing when we got here was basically taking we took the 21 sales, and we've worked the 22 sales up to about October. And as the staff puts those sales in, we put them in categories. And typically, counties, they use a cost schedule, and they back it up with sales value. Income approach is used for rental properties and commercial properties mostly. So the majority of the assessed values that come from all the counties in the state of North Carolina come from a cost approach. That schedule values that we start adopting is where we start looking at the sales and seeing, how we fit all those categories. We look at vacant land. We put categories with those sales and use them like Excel spreadsheets, and using statistics. We do vacant lots. We do improved residential properties. We do farm sales, and most of you know in the last 2 years, the market's been really good and a lot of sales in Nash County. So we've had quite a few sales to put and look at those things. We will continue to track those sales because most of you probably realize the market may be getting a little bit more steady or maybe going down a little bit. So we will track those sales up through the end of the revaluation, and we will keep looking at those sales as we go along in 23 to see how they track. But the county always does a ratio study, and basically that's taking the assessed value and those sales and matching it up. And every year, the Department of Revenue requires the county and the appraisal staff, they send in quarterly reports on what the assessed value is doing. As of 1/1/22, the annual report, Nash County was at 70% of the market value from those sales. And another thing we track is a statistical coefficient of dispersion, which is basically as most of you remember the old bell curve, the sales that are outside those parameters, and we try to adjust that. And a satisfactory COD mostly is about 12% after you get your revaluation done. Used to be about 7%, but they've allowed it to stretch a little bit further now. So we are working on those things as we go, and as Gary said, we'll be doing a lot of the desktop reviews, looking at the pictures. We have a grading system. We have actual year and effective year that we can move values up and down. We have taken the sales so far that we've had, and we have come up with preliminary schedule values that we've been using, and we've been taking We started off with some communities that had brand-new houses because you have no depreciation on those to come up with, see if we're hitting those values. And then we've taken some older communities, neighborhoods. Nash County has about 700, 800 neighborhoods already that are set up in the tax system, in the software. So we're doing all those things as time goes on. And that's all I've got, and Jim's going to kind of talk about schedule, the timeline on the revaluation and what, the commissioners can expect from us. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
It's good to be back here again. It's good to see all of you, and like Gene said, there's some new faces. It's good to meet you all. But just in following up and finishing up what we've been talking about, Gene mentioned the schedule of values. That will be coming up. You will be asked to adopt a schedule of values. It'll be presented sometime in probably October, November timeframe. Now, the schedule of values it can be, that term, schedule of values, doesn't need to be confused with the values that are going out. They will be sent out in probably early to mid-February. But the schedule of values, of course, is, in my mind, would be better referred to as a price schedule or a price sheet, per square foot, per acre rates and that type of thing go into that schedule of values. But anyway, when we present the schedule of values to you, there'll be time for a public hearing on that schedule of values and a process to go through to adopt the schedule of values. Once that's done, of course, as I said before, early February, maybe mid-February probably, we'll be able to send out the value notices to the taxpayers. And then, of course, that will set into motion the opportunity for taxpayers, if they so desire, to appeal their values. Now, they'll be able to appeal, I'm sure, online. They'll have the option of appealing online or by phone call, by an appointment or physical visit at the office. And if there are extenuating circumstances that are there, we can go to the taxpayer in certain circumstances. And then, of course, when we get through with the appeals process, the first layer of appeal will be to us, our staff, And then once that is done or completed, and we'll make every effort, of course, to listen to the taxpayer, and I think, and I know I speak for everyone on staff, on Mr. Piner's staff, in that, we want to treat the taxpayers of Nash County the way we would like to be treated if we were sitting on the other side of the desk. So that's something that is paramount to the way we do our business. But anyway, so after we get through with our part of the appeal process, then there'll be a layer of appeal that will be available to the public to appeal to Ms. Sumner's staff. That will be between, that level of appeal comes between us and you all. Because as most of you know, I'm sure, you'll be sitting as the Board of Equalization and Review. That process in a reval year, unlike a non-reval year in the middle of the cycle, in the reval year, you actually have until the end of the year, if needed, hopefully that won't be necessary, to complete all of the appeals. Typically, in a non-reval year, you're finished with them usually by the end of June, if not before. But that gives you some basic outline then of what we're doing and the timeline of how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it. Any questions?
Jim, that end of year is end of year?
23, the end of the calendar year.
But for us to hear all appeals.
I'm sorry.
Be 2024.
24, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting old,
I thought that, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, 24.
And the effective new values go in tax year 2025.
January 1, 20, actually, the effective values are effective January 1, 2024, and they affect the tax bill that goes out in July of '24.
And we hear appeals even beyond that.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Well, any appeals, do they go directly, the taxpayer can appeal directly to the company or
Yes.
to the tax office here in the county?
The first level of appeal, it will be to our staff.
Okay.
And then after us, if they feel like they're still not being treated fairly, or they still question it, if we can't come to terms, then they go to the staff. All right?
Other questions of the whole process, of either three of the gentlemen?
The second man that spoke, you mentioned about the values that were being used briefly in sales data. Do you mind to state that again or provide a little more clarity on that?
What we were looking at is 2021 sales, 22 sales, 23 sales. And we try to categorize all those in vacant lots, farm sales, residential, even commercial, and Gary and them be looking at commercial, his division. But those values, we try to come up with a cost value, but we back it up with those sales by neighborhood, by house types, by grades, a lot of different categories. And we do not go inside any houses unless the taxpayer wants us to go inside. We're basically looking at a picture, and we make that valuation. It's mass appraisal, so it's not anything related to like a fee appraisal where, we use a lot of tools. We look at Google Earth, and we look at Zillow and MLS, we see a lot of sales sometimes that, I can tell you an example, manufactured home. You see a sale about 2 years ago that sold for $40,000, and you see the next one that sells for $180,000, the same piece of property. And you go at Zillow and you look, and they've redone the whole inside of the house, But, they're hard to kind of put your finger on and say, well, how did this 1984 double wide get to this value, or manufactured home? So some of those things, it's mass appraisal, and it's hard to sometimes put your finger on everything, but we'll have some that go up in value, we'll have some that go down in value, and, we'll deal with the appeals when they come in and give everybody the opportunity to tell us what's wrong with that property, if there's something that we don't see, and we would go by and visit that property if they want us to, So.
Other questions or comments from either gentleman? I know last time for Jim or Gene, either one, we had y'all in the mindset because of where we were of trying to get the values as high as we could because we knew we were in a bad way. When you get in a different opposite reverse, do y'all have trouble adjusting with your mindset, knowing that you're not getting pushed to do that so much now, and you need to be able to look at a wider span and not just those 2 years you described and where we might end up? How do you make that adjustment in your thought process?
It is rather difficult because it is a flip of what we were in before, exactly what you're saying. So we do have to take that into consideration, and we try to look at trends, and see how things are trending. And we have to make our best estimate as to where we're at the point of January 1st. Anything that happens economically, as you know, from the last time in reverse, anything that happens, we can't react to it after that point, in mid-cycle. And things happen in cycles, and, it's just anybody's guess, but we have to use the data. We actually, of course, we can't, we have to value every house in the county, or every business, every structure in the county, and we have to use the ones that sold to help us build models to value the ones that do not sell. But yes, and that's another reason too that I notices go out in February, perhaps mid to late February, because you want to look at all of the sales for that prior year, in this case for 23, to try your best to determine what trend is developing, and then adjust those values accordingly. And of course, in the schedule of values, we'll have built in there, we should be able to build into the schedule of values enough flexibility to react to that.
Gene?
You know, sometimes you may, that 100% value that you're trying to reach, you may be pushing it down to maybe 90 or 95%, you know. But you have a lot of statistical stuff you can do there at the end that we try to look at percentage of increase from old value to new value, see if there's anything out there that we don't want any $1 million properties that, that really are $50,000 properties sitting out there. But you try to look at all those statistics, you know, as best as you can up to that point, the end of December of 23.
In history, for you three gentlemen, in your history, all of you been at it a long time, I'm sure, the appeal of percentage, is it generally higher in a rising market or a decreasing market? Or is there any distinct difference in those two?
Well, they usually say about 5% of the parcels you have appeals on, but that, you know, let's say it can be in. And I've seen county sales ratios that, you know, the 2007, 2008, and then, you know, they get caught where they're real high over the market values. We haven't had that problem, but I've seen some, after some revaluations, they will, you know. And some counties do revaluations every 2 years, some do them every 4 years. The standard is the 8 years in the more rural areas, but, you know. And we try to look around also at the cost schedules that have been, Edgecomb's doing a revaluation same time Nash is. Halifax is doing a 4-year revaluation. Franklin County's doing a revaluation.
Wilson too.
Wilson County.
We're doing Wilson as well at the same time. We're doing the same type job for them that we're doing for you guys. And it's good that we'll have the adjoining counties to share data, market data. It'll be really good.
I think we've historically always done Nash and Edgecombe at the same time, simply because of the Rocky Mountain situation, not to confuse our residents that live in the city limits there. I would just, you know, before, Jim, we had a few people that were concerned that we set their values too low. Of course, we won't have that this time, I don't think. I would think you would have more appeals on a rising market, but apparently that doesn't necessarily hold true.
Well, I've been involved in one reval where the appeal rate was up around maybe 9%, 8, 9%, close to 10%, but that's as much as I've ever seen.
So which one of y'all is going to give us the projection of the percent of increase of our total assessed value this morning?
I don't think you're going to get any volunteers on that.
Can't do that, sir. All right.
There's no way to do it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I know, this is a comment. In the last reval, I noticed Rocky Mountain in the city, value of property was downside much lower than it was out here in the county. What caused that? Did you have an idea? I know you all didn't do it, but
Well, actually, Mr. Wren did.
but
Well,
I thought it was a lot lower. I know
yeah.
with my own personal property, I called the county and told them that I don't agree with this.
Right. It is
I believe
difficult.
my property is valued more than where they had dropped it, about $40,000 or $50,000.
And I think, well, of course, first of all, and as you're aware, I'm sure, you can come and appeal your value either way. Whether if it's too low, let us know. If it's too high, we need to know too. But in the city of Rocky Mount, I know it was rather difficult because Rocky Mount is not, the same as the properties out in the county, and there were a limited amount of sales in the city of Rocky Mount. It was a rather difficult process. I'm not saying it was done totally right, but it is that is a big challenge. But I think this time we're going to be able to see more activity, more sales, that we're going to have more information to use as we build that schedule. Of course, I can't speak to the commercial side of things, but
Yeah, I guess some people like it, maybe when they pay less tax, but if they want to sell the property, then people buying gonna look at the value on it, and that's what they could get. They're not gonna be able to do any better. So I felt mine was worth more than the way they had put it, and I told them, move it up.
I do believe you're gonna see a substantial difference in the values in Rocky Mount this time, probably more so than the rest of the counties, and I'm not gonna be surprised if most of our appeals come out of Rocky Mount because of the total increase in value, because they have changed tremendously over what they were at our last reval, particularly the last 3 years. It's been a huge difference. Any other questions, comments? If not, well, we greatly appreciate y'all being here, appreciate the job that you're doing, and I won't speak for all the board, but I certainly have a comfort level in what we will get this time, particularly with the people working on it that certainly know about Nash County as well as anybody does. So I thank you two gentlemen for helping out Mr. Finery during this process. I'm sure you'll probably reimburse well, but that's not for us to get into. But thank you a lot for being here this morning.
thank you.
Look forward to finishing this thing up.
Yeah, they're very valuable to us. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. All right, that was item number 10. Number 11 is the monthly tax report. Ms. Sumner?
All right, yes, sir. At this time, I'd like to present the monthly tax report. As you know, this report is designed to keep the board current on activities in the tax collector's office. The report is for your information only and does not require approval. However, it is recommended that you accept the report so that it will be noted in the minutes. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Do you know where you are at this point in time versus last year?
As the end of December, we were right at 81.78%, and I think we are around about 92 or 93% right now this is February, end of January.
And how does that compare to a year ago, you think?
We're right on board where we were.
Okay, great. Good. All right. Any questions? All right, we will accept the report and have it noted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then the next item I have is the refund request. We do have refunds this month that need approval so that we may disperse those funds to the taxpayers.
Any questions on the refunds? Looks like most of them had to do with solid waste.
Yes, sir.
And no meters, I think. All right, entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Approved by Commissioner Wilkins, second by Commissioner Belfield. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Refund stand approved. You have another item today?
Yes, sir. My last item is the report of unpaid taxes and tax lien advertisement. General Statute 105-369 requires that the tax collector in February of each year report to the governing body the total amount of unpaid taxes for the current fiscal year that are liens on real property. In accordance with that statute, the total amount of unpaid taxes for 2022 as of January 31st, 2023, is $2,097,884.92. This figure does not include any interest, and a list of these unpaid taxes is on file in the tax collector's office. General Statute 105-369 also requires that the governing body order the tax collector to advertise these tax liens. Advertisement must be made at least one time between March 1st and June 30th. So the action that I need from the board today is to first approve the report of the tax collector on unpaid 22 taxes that are a lien on real property. And the second is to order the tax collector to advertise the 2022 taxes that are liens.
Can that be one motion, or you need two?
I think one motion would be good.
First, I want to ask any commissioner's name on that list.
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Entertain a motion for approval, and also approve what she said, the advertising.
The advertisement, yes, sir.
Yes.
Move for approval.
Motion by Commissioner Leggett, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. Questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and all your staff. Next item, number 14, is abandoned mobile home project ordinance. Call on Ms. Wood for her first item today.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay, the first item I have is an abandoned manufactured homes closeout project ordinance. Nash County was awarded $27,000 from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality for the demolition, disposal, and recycling of abandoned and dilapidated manufactured homes. The grant covered up to $1,500 for single-wide manufactured homes and up to $2,500 for double-wide manufactured homes. For bids that exceeded the grant coverage, owners and local funds paid the overage. Nash County had a total of 17 manufactured homes disposed and recycled through this program. And this request is that the board adopt the closeout project ordinance attached.
Any questions? Entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Leggett. Questions on that motion? We'll say, never been any happier to close project ordinance out than I have this one. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. Next item number 15 is budget amendments. Ms. Wood?
Okay. The following budget amendments are presented for the board's consideration for fiscal year 22-23. I have 6 budget amendments for consideration. The first one is with the Health Department. This budget amendments to budget additional state funds to purchase medical supplies for family planning services and to enhance tuberculosis disease screening and treatment. It's a total of $2,286, and no county funds are required. The next item is with Cooperative Extension Farmers Market. This amendment's presented to budget additional sponsorship funds collected to be used for the upcoming regional production meetings at the farmers market. It's for $1,529, and no county funds are required. The third item is with the Sheriff's Office Governor's Crime Commission grants. This amendment's presented to budget current year grant funding received from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety Governor's Crime Commission for 2 projects. The projects include Project 15594, which is a statewide accreditation priority local law enforcement, and Project 15492, which is a block grant for narcotics identification device. It's a total of $36,601. No county funds are required. The next item is for a fund balance transfer. This budget amendment makes fund balance available to transfer to the Middlesex Corporate Center Sewer Electric Road Improvement Project, approved with the project ordinance presented and approved at the January 23rd Commissioners' meeting. It's a request of $1,107,790. The fifth item is with Rural Operating Assistance Program. At the time the budget was adopted, the final funding had not been set for the Rural Operating Assistance Program. This amendment allocates additional funds according to the 22-23 Rural Operating Assistance Program Agreement. It's increasing our funding by $36,753 for the current year. No county funds required. And the final item I have is with the water and sewer funds. This amendment is presented to allow for the purchase of replacement water meters, both the Central Nash Water System and the Northern Nash Water System, with additional revenue collections in both of these funds, as a request of $19,000.
Questions on budget amendments? The fund balance transfer, is that item identified in the fund balance has been for economic development, or is it just is it a restricted fund balance or out of general fund balance?
That is, we did it as a public hearing with economic development.
Okay.
So it's identified as economic development fund balance.
Thank you. No questions, entertain a motion for approval of the 6 budget amendments. Moved by Commissioner Combs, a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Questions on either of those 6? Seeing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Budget amendments stand approved. Thank you, ma'am. Next item is board appointments. Looks like we have one. I'll call on Scott Rogers to make this presentation.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning,
The
sir.
Nash County Agricultural Advisory Board has submitted a request that Ms. Amy Sweem be appointed to their board to replace Mr. Steve Bass. Mr. Bass retired and chose to no longer serve late last year, and this recommendation would fill his vacancy.
Any questions? Motion for approval? Moved by Commissioner Leggett, second by Commissioner Combs. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? That lady stands approved. Next item is item number 17, which is any comment by commissioners. Seeing none, I have, did you have something, Mr. Belfield?
I was just going to make one simple comment that I made before. I'd like to see us as the county explore affordable housing projects, maybe some grants. Take a look at it, and maybe some decision could be made later in the future, but we ought to take a look at it. Many counties have started doing this, and I think we ought to take a look at it also.
All right, you have indeed mentioned that before, and I do hear it come up in some of our committee meetings and funding meetings. I think we are cognizant of that need in Nash County. All right, a couple things I had, of course, on housing. We had another good month, particularly for the month of January. We had 35 new home permits requested by 18 different builders. I'm always impressed with the number of builders we have working in Nash County. We had about $3.4 million worth of non-residential permits that were applied for. So things have slowed down, but it certainly hadn't died by any means. I think each commissioner got notified by the niece of Miss Pearl Lamb Finch of her passing. Recently, her funeral is actually at 11 o'clock this morning. I did talk to her niece just a little bit about that. She has a very distinguished history in Nash County, as you know, particularly in the school systems and many other things that she's done. Her obituary is pretty lengthy, to say the least, and most noted out of many things is the statement was made that she was a proud Democrat and the first woman to serve as chair of the Nash County Democratic Party, which happened back in 1976. And I would invite you to read that obituary. The one I have came out of the Telegram, but very, very distinguished person that we have lost in southern part of the county, as well as the whole county. I think was very dear to her. It's, of course, her daughter and niece that appears before this board many times, as which actually Ms. Finch appeared before the board, I believe during the code development process, or very recently she did. I remember her sitting over there during the land development update that we recently had. But I really think that was worth noting this morning. And as I said, her funeral was at 11 o'clock this morning. Dan, anything you want to add? Or
Southern Nash County will miss Miss Pearl Finch. She's well-known by everybody, and her vigor right up to the end, she was interested in things like when, just this fall, she was in here voicing her concerns.
Absolutely. Yep. She was a long-time guidance counselor at Southern Nash High School, as well as a teacher there, but I've always held up to a high esteem anybody that serves as a guidance counselor in high school. They've got a big job to undertake, particularly probably more so now than maybe when we were coming along. I don't know. They certainly deal with a lot of different things, I'm sure, than what they did then. I also got notification of, actually, Elaine Marshall called me herself, wanted to let the commissioners know that she would be in our area on February 23rd, from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, making the presentation in the Nash Room at the Event Center downtown. I think she said she had called you also, Ms. Wilkins. Anything else you want to add to that?
No.
But she did want to make sure we invited all commissioners to attend that particular and she explained to me what she was doing. It's a new undertaking that she has taken, and I was pretty interested in, so I told her I would certainly be there if anybody else can make it. And it is from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock on the 23rd in the Nash Room.
She did invite any businesses that wanted to attend to come as well.
Did she tell you the nature of the presentation?
Gwen, you want to elaborate on that?
I mean, what are we going to hear?
The Secretary of State, she just wants to make known about the support from the Secretary of State's office to various businesses and particularly minority businesses and whatnot.
I think she was wanting to show, I think she wanted to educate small businesses and new startups. That's what she explained to me, of how easy it was, or how their relationship with the Secretary of State, how they could make that transition. Because a lot of times people just don't know they need to file an annual report and numerous other things. It's basically a simple introductory class to what the Secretary of State does is what I got out of it.
Education.
Yep, probably more than that, but that's what I got out of it. And that's all I had. Mr. Manager, I'll turn it over to you this time. Excuse me. I didn't mean to go before you went. You didn't get my attention.
No problem.
Okay.
You gave me an opportunity to think about a couple of things.
Okay, great.
I'd like to also echo about Ms. Finch. She was a great Democrat, and we're going to miss her. I worked with her when I was chair of the Nash County Democratic Party, and always outspoken for the citizens of Nash County. Also, I want to say, I got a call from Mr. William Burnett. He's was a young, an older veteran that had been trying to get his disability. He wanted to show up today for our public meeting and thank Mr. Rogers and his staff for the job that they had did as far as getting him his disability. He's an older veteran, and he wanted to make sure that they were recognized for the good job they were doing, and he intended to come, but his health wouldn't let him come today.
Right.
Also, I guess another, continue to, since Ms. Hamlin is here, continue to get some calls about the some of your departments in social service about lack of staffing and training, and I guess some of them are getting a little frustrated about being overworked with some overtime requirements.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, all right. Any other comment from commissioners?
Chairman, I'm so sorry. I found the note from I almost said Elaine, Secretary Marshall. And it is a business roundtable at the event center from 2 to 3. Like you said, on the 23rd, she's going to share information on new business creations in rural Rise, North Carolina, followed by a roundtable. And it will include Nash and Edgecombe counties.
Thank you. Madam Manager?
Yes, sir. For the month of January, the co-responder numbers were 12. I did not receive a breakdown between DSS and the Sheriff's Office, but 12 referrals were made in January. And I'm pleased to announce that Nash County Government is one of United Way's winners for their Spirit of North Carolina Award. We will be in Goldsboro on March the 3rd to receive that award. This award honors companies that demonstrate excellence in their United Way campaign, and in addition to campaign participation and donations received, winning companies receive high marks for exceptional leadership and partnership with communities to create positive and lasting change. And I'd like to personally thank our United Way committee that works all year long to help Nash County employees raise those funds. Led by Jonathan Boone and Anderson Kirkland, Susan Phelps, Jonathan Edwards, Kimberly Shields, Thomas Gillespie, Scott Strufy, Misty Strickland, and Amy Pridgeon-Hamlet. You all have a handout at your place for the Citizens Academy. The back side of this is a one-page application for the program. And that application deadline is March the 10th. This year, the program will be on Tuesdays, starting March the 21st and ending on May 16th. We encourage citizens and employees wishing to learn more about local government to attend this program. The Communications Department is now taking the lead on this program, so we want to thank Jonathan and Amber for taking on this project. You can see that it's got a new look this year, and they will be excited to run that program starting March the 21st. The NACO Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C., just a reminder, February 11th through the 14th. I believe we have 3 commissioners that are attending that conference. A reminder that the NCACC district meeting will be at the Granville Convention Center and Expo. Convention and Expo Center in Oxford, Thursday, March the 2nd, starting at 5:30. So I'd imagine as we get towards the end of the month, we'll do some coordinating on travel arrangements. And Scott and I attended a seminar last week in Winston-Salem and heard the state treasurer speak. And I'm sure Mr. Falwell will appreciate me sharing with you and our citizens to visit www.nccash.com for unclaimed properties. He is very proud of that site and promotes it a lot, and folks might find some money that belongs to him out there. And that's all I have.
All right. One last item I had was I wanted to see if the board would consider our August meeting, which is scheduled for August the 7th, at request of a commissioner to be moved back 1 week to August 14th. First wanted to ask staff, would that cause any undue hardship to staff if we were to do that? If you'll notice it, our meeting in the month prior to that and the month after that are a little bit later in the month as well. So if we could consider moving that meeting from the 7th to the 14th, I'd like to clear that up today so we could get proper notice or whatever the clerk would need to do that. Anybody have an issue with that if you have your calendars with you?
No, purpose of moving the meeting.
Sir?
Purpose of moving the meeting.
The purpose was at the request of a commissioner who would be out of state at that particular time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a slight issue. That's my birthday weekend, and I will be out of state.
You'll be out of state on the 14th?
Well, my plan was to return on the 14th, but if it's absolutely necessary, I could return early that morning. But it seems that both myself and that other commissioner are out of state, so the one that wants to change it. I mean, if you feel it's very important for that other one to change it, then.
I don't have a feel. I present it to the board, and the board
Okay.
makes the decision if that's okay. It seemed very legitimate, the request was, but let's see how everything goes. Yes,
Can
sir.
you use, the internet
I didn't understand.
Can they access the meeting through the internet?
We have determined that since we are not under a executive order, that we are going to be on shady ground if we do that. We've had that request pretty recently before, and the attorney let us know that he didn't think we should be doing that. Is that still correct, Mr. Durham, I guess?
I think that's the general consensus, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Pleasure to the board, I'll state, I do not have an issue with it. If it fits my calendar fine, how does everybody else? Gwen, I certainly note your potential conflict with it. Sue,
I don't have any issue with it.
Dan,
Either one's fine with me.
Mr. Harrington,
Not really.
Mr. Outlaw,
Good.
Mr. Belfield.
What, the 14th?
Yes, sir.
When is the state County Commission Association meeting? It's somewhere in that range.
It would not be on a Monday, irregardless.
Well, it wouldn't be. No, it would be more
Generally starting
on
Wednesday,
Thursday,
Right,
most likely.
right.
Well, looks like the 14th is okay.
Do you see any problem with staff making the change, or the clerk?
I have the week marked off for vacation, but nothing's scheduled yet, so I can work around it.
Okay. Gwen?
I would probably have to ask for an excused absence.
So you can't come back early that morning?
I would have to rearrange everything.
Okay, all right. Pleasure to the board.
Do we want to consider the 15th?
I'm willing to do anything the board agrees to.
I'm good with the 15th.
Anybody have an issue with the 15th? You'll be back then? Any issue with the 15th, anybody?
No issue with the 15th. I mean, if we did it on the 14th, we would probably have to change our meeting time.
You might have to change the meeting time, okay?
If we want to have it on the 14th, I suppose.
I'm going to ask for a motion on the 15th at our regular time, 9 o'clock, if somebody's willing to make that motion.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins at 9 o'clock on August 15th. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion to change our August meeting from the 7th into the 15th, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Thank y'all. That completes our agenda that I have for today, other than closed session. I would entertain a motion at this time to go into closed session. Items to be covered are economic development matters, matters of attorney-client privilege, and the performance of an employee. Do not expect any action to be taken, but irregardless, we will come back in this room and close out our meeting. Are we recessing or are we closing?
Adjourning.
The legislative dinner is in March. Gotcha, okay. All right, entertain a motion to go into closed session for the item stated.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wilkins, there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Take about a 10-minute recess and go into closed session. Thank you. I call the regular meeting of the Nash County Board of Commissioners back to order at this time. There was no action taken in closed session or no discussion that needs action in open session. Closed session motion to adjourn was made by Quinn Wilkins and seconded by Fred Belfield. And you voted on to close the closed session. There's no other business at this time. Anything else need to come up? We don't have another anything before our next meeting, so therefore I'd entertain a motion to close the meeting for the month of March for the Nash County Board of Commissioners.
Month of
February.
February.
Yeah, that's what I said, month of February. It sounded like I said March, but I said February.
February.
Okay.
I'd entertain a motion to close the, I told Stacy a while ago, I had a middle of the night call I had to go tend to with situation with some people that I'm in charge of sometimes. Hadn't had a whole lot of sleep, but that's not an excuse. But anyway, entertain a motion to close the February meeting of Nash County Board of Commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
Numerous motions. I think Mr. Arrington, I heard first. I heard a second.
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, you did. Who did I hear
It was
first?
Wayne.
You're the only one then.
You heard me and then Wayne.
Okay. Heard somebody over there beside the way. It doesn't matter. Motion by Ms. Wilkins, second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign or welcome to stay here? Thank you. Stand adjourned.